Hi, welcome to Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts, where our experts will answer your questions. Happy to have a couple experts joining me today. Dr. Philip Lancaster, nutritionist here from Kansas State,
Hi, Brad.
and Dr. Scott Fritz, a board-certified toxicologist, also at Kansas State. Hi, Scott.
How's it going, Brad?
So on this program, what we'll do is we're going to answer your questions, and as each expert answers, they'll get points for their answers, up to 10 points, because we've only got a few minutes to go through. So let's jump right in with today's question, which is from a producer who said, I'd like to graze some cattle on alfalfa. I know that's a delicate process, but wanted to know what your opinions are for the best ways to manage it. Philip, I'm going to go to you first.
Okay, well, I think there's a couple things to think about from nutrition and grazing standpoint. Some varieties of alfalfa are more tolerant of grazing than others, and so that may be one thing to think about what variety of alfalfa it is. But the more importantly is to think about the type of animal that you're going to graze on that alfalfa. If it's growing calves, great, they're going to do well on that. If it's cows, especially spring calving cows that you've just weaned calves off of, that alfalfa is really higher in nutrition than they need, and so they don't really need to be on there full time. So you could move them back and forth, give them partial days, use it almost like a supplement type of thing to keep those cows in good body condition.
Excellent. Scott?
To Philip's point, I think those are all good things. From an issue standpoint, anytime that you've got cattle that you put on there that are unacclimated to a situation like that, you could run into some problems. With alfalfa's protein content, that causes a lot of issues. We'll see some bloats as a result of that. You can see kind of an acute respiratory distress like you would see with a moldy sweet potato or a perilla mint like in the southeast, kind of the same situation there. And then alfalfa is also known to produce some plant-derived estrogens, and so if you're setting up heifers or something in a sync program, that's something to consider from a grazing standpoint, I guess.
So excellent points on both sides. You're talking about the type of cattle that they might bring on there, whether it's cows or calves. And Philip, I think that's a great answer, 7 points. And Scott's bringing in, hey, there's some other toxic areas or toxic principles that we might want to think about, and good information there on how we want to graze them, 8 points. So now tell me, what should I do? What should this person do to manage? Because you guys all talked about the risks, and Philip, you mentioned a little bit of the upside. But how do I manage that if I've got this great resource there and I'll narrow the field and I'll say, I've got cows that I'm going to put out there?
Okay, so I think one of the things that you need to manage is adapting those cattle to that alfalfa to avoid some bloat issues. And so making sure they're full on grass before you transition them, maybe transitioning them a little bit of the time during the day and then moving them off, and so they get a little bit of their rumen gets adapted to that and help to minimize some of those bloat issues. Another thing would be to use a mineral product that has a anti-bloat protector compound in it, so that will help minimize those bloat issues.
Okay, so get them adjusted and then use some sort of product to try to get them up and easy so you have less bloat. Scott?
Yeah, that's a good point. And there are surfactant products you can put out there that'll help with the bloat issue. Again, it's an acclimation thing. So if you can acclimate those animals somehow, not give them full access right away, keeping them fed before you put them out there, even going through and mowing, if you've got quite a bit of alfalfa standing, cut it and let it wilt for a couple of days before you turn cows in there. I think that's an easy way to get around some of those issues.
Okay. What do we do to prevent some of the other toxic issues that you mentioned? So the acute respiratory distress and some of the estrogen production or potential estrogen production. Since I'm turning cows out there, if they're pregnant, do I have to worry? Only if they're cycling and I'm trying to get them bred, is that a concern?
Yeah, so the phytoestrogens are going to be, they're just estrogen compounds, so it shouldn't affect pregnancy whatsoever. It's going to affect, the way the estrous cycle works. But if they're already pregnant, I wouldn't be too concerned about it. For the respiratory distress situation, I think that goes back to protein content. They're just getting an abrupt change to feed with too much protein compared to what they're used to. And so that goes back to acclimating those cows before they're out there.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. Good answers on both sides. And I think Scott is going to end up with 9 points on this one, brought in some new areas. Philip, you're right there with 8 points. But I think enough different principles and things going on here really have a conversation with probably a veterinarian and a nutritionist, right, on both to make sure that you get this right. As always, we appreciate you sending in a question. If you have another question you'd like us to answer, you can always email us at bci@ksu.edu.